tragedy to score political points at the expense of his own state's police officers at a time when obviously and clearly tensions against law enforcement are now reaching a fever pitch. Coming up, I have a full monologue on this recent wave of violence, also against police, straight ahead. But first, joining us with the very latest on the ground in Minnesota tonight, our own Mike Tobin. Mike, they are supposed to be in a curfew time. Is the curfew now full in effect, and are people obeying the curfew?
You know, it's interesting, Sean, as I talked to people in the run-up to the curfew, and everyone I spoke with said that they were going to obey the curfew and stand down when the time came. But we're now an hour into the curfew. You may have heard the sound that was going on behind me, and what that was the LRAD, the long-range acoustic device used by the police, announcing to these people that this is an unlawful assembly, that they are in violation of the curfew. If anything, the numbers out here have grown. You can see that big crowd, and that's kind of the northwest side of the police headquarters here, where so much of the conflict happened last night, off in that direction. The police are back behind fencing, supplemented by concrete jersey barriers, if you will. Those jersey barriers and the chain link fencing, that's all a new development that went in today. There's some of the force you see of the multi-agency force that's actually part of the Operation Safety Net intended to secure the Derek Chauvin trial, but they've all been called up for this. As we look further in this direction, a little more southeast, you see something ballparked at 100 state troopers who are now part of the crowd control effort. When they arrived at this part of the street here, a lot of the demonstrators who were concentrated over to the northwest side came in this direction. Usually what we see is they come in this direction looking for some kind of friction, some kind of conflict. In the crowd, we've spotted one handgun, mostly makeshift weapons, things like shields, things that could be used for breaking windows, to that effect. And I'm saying that everyone in the crowd has them. We've spotted some of those type of weapons in the crowd. And what we now have is just a very tense situation, waiting to see how this is going to resolve. Clearly, you have some demonstrators out here in a rainy, cold, miserable night, intent on staying until something sends them home. You have the police who say the curfew's in effect. You saw all the things that happened last summer when the curfews weren't enforced, and what remains to be seen is how people are going to handle this.
Watch behind you, Sean? Please. Mike, think people just got in behind you. Very quickly, with the curfew being in effect and talking to the people, what is the reaction to the city manager, the guy that was fired for saying that we need due process first? What is the feeling among those?
You know, I haven't had a lot of conversations with the demonstrators specific to the city manager being fired. What I've had conversations with them about, it always goes back to the conflict with race and with police. And the one-word answer I get from people is anger. They're frustrated, and something just made some noise back there. There's a vehicle pulled up. I think somebody hit the vehicle. And we got a small conflict brewing here on the street behind me. That's Humboldt Street. And somebody hit that car as it was driving through the crowd. And you got a lot of emotions that are as a result, and it looks like that situation is going to dissipate. Now, that driver's not very happy about it, though. That's what we're watching right now, Sean.
And the police remain hidden behind the barricades that they had built? Any police officer, any police presence? Are they coming out?
Well, what I showed you on the other side of the street was about 100 state troopers who had indeed come out from behind the fence. And what remains to be seen is if they're going to advance down the street, if they're going to clear the street. Late last night, we saw people were talking about tear gas last night. I think only smoke was used last night. But after the smoke was popped, after you had some of the people run off the street, you had a large contingent of state troopers just march off up the street, and it was effective at clearing the street here. The problem is what we saw here and what we saw in Kenosha. When you run the demonstrators off of one location, they go somewhere else. And when they went somewhere else last night, and like they did in Kenosha, that's when you get some of the destruction. That's when you get the looting. Sean?
All right, we'll get back to Mike Tobin throughout the hour. Mike, break in any time. Tonight, every shooting